So that phone call to Putin, yeah, it didn't do a thing. Putin is still the crazy maniac that we all know him to be. And did we really expect the conversation to go well anyway? Let me go ahead and kind of break this down for you. If you don't know, earlier today, Scholz, against the wishes of Ukraine, called Putin. Now, Scholz did say you need to end this, there needs to be a just and lasting peace, and blah, 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 blah. All the things that, the world all kind of like, hey, yeah, that makes sense. Russia should stop doing this and remove their men from Ukraine. What did Putin say? Well, this guy says that his proposals were well known and outlined already, and that's kind of what he wants to go with. So, yeah, he's not looking for peace right now. He wants to continue this, and he's still demanding exactly the same things that he's been demanding for 2.5 years now, almost 3 years. Now, I do want to read for you his quote that came out, so that way you've got the full context. As for the prospects for a political and diplomatic settlement of the conflict, the Russian president noted that the Russian side has never refused and remains open to the resumption of the negotiations that were interrupted by the Kyiv regime, adding that Russia's proposals are well known and outlined, particularly in a June speech at the Russian Foreign Ministry. Putin then told Scholz that the crisis was directly provoked by NATO's aggressive policy, aka to get closer and closer to Russia, which, funny enough, there's actually more NATO territory closer to Russia than ever before, adding that Ukraine became an anti-Russian foothold and that they infringed on the rights of Russian speakers in Ukraine and ignored Moscow's security interests. Which, before I continue, must remind you that no, none of that is true, in the sake that NATO was not really truly looking on expanding at that point. They were discussing it, but it really was nothing. Not a reason to invade Ukraine. And remember, they were going to do it in 2020, but the pandemic happened, so you can't use that excuse. Putin then stated that relationships between Berlin and Moscow have deteriorated over the years, and that the reason is the unfriendly German policies, aka sanctions. Putin then said that, hey, at any point, Russia is ready to provide you guys with energy-related commitments when you're ready for it, saying Germany, it's whenever you're ready to start this up, in which Germany's like, hell no, man, we ain't doing that. That's not happening here. But both of them then talked about the Middle East before Scholz saying that, hey, North Korean troops in Russia, not really a good idea, before the conversation ended with both of them agreeing to task their aides to be in touch for maybe potentially future conversations down the line. But let's back up for a second here. Putin still wants exactly what he wants back in June and 2+ years ago. So what has changed? Nothing. So far, looks like when it comes to gas and oil, Russia is selling roughly about the same amount, granted, at discounted prices, but they're still making money. So there is no pressure from the oligarchs to have Putin slow the roll here. There has been no pressure whatsoever from any of the Russians, and we're seeing this. There's no rioting, there's no people freaking out, even though this week has been one of the worst weeks ever for Russia. And then there is no pressure from ammunition, because why? Well, Russia teamed up with their baddies, whether it be North Korea, whether it be China, you name it. They're still getting steadily amounts of supplies and weapons so that they can continue this. There's not enough pressure. And because the United States has not allowed Ukraine to strike deeper into Russia, there's no threat there. So, from his point of view, he's got no reason to concede on anything. And that is the problem. As I've stated in the video that's been pinned in this channel for like 3 weeks now, the only way you're going to get him to stop is if you put enough pressure on him. And we just have not seen that. And this is where Zelensky's thought process comes in. By Scholz now reaching out to him, it kind of makes the world look a little bit desperate, which gives him that feeling of like, we're doing something good here. So at the end of the day, this conversation was not a good one. Not one that would help Ukraine. It actually, I think, helped his whole facade, because now it makes it look like the countries are bowing down and like, oh, Mr. Putin, what can we, you have to stop this. Please stop this. When we could have isolated him even more so that he feels like he's lost, and that feeling of, not sure what's going to happen. It is truly a very interesting situation we find ourselves in. The question is, what's going to happen next? We don't know. I mean, we do know that countries are going to be flooding Ukraine with weapons and support. And when Ukraine's going to get more airplanes, they're going to be getting a lot more air defense systems. They're going to be getting more air defense missiles. They're going to be getting a lot of stuff. But, and this is the big but, is any of that enough to threaten Putin enough to make him scared to want to negotiate? And at that time, it doesn't look like this. And here's the funny thing is that let's go back to the Kremlin's press release. In it, they actually talked about how the mantra of the same thing of European leaders is coming through. We hear it, quote unquote, several times a day. They're almost mocking the rest of the world, saying, yep, they're all saying the same thing over and over again. They don't see the rest of the world as a threat right now. And because Russia is living in that world where there is no threat, it's becoming a very interesting situation in which Russia feels like they're unstoppable. And until you can pierce that, until you're able to get that through their head that they're not unstoppable, they're going to keep living like that. So the questions that we really, or at least the main question we should be asking is, what is that one thing that we could do to Russia that would stop them from thinking that they have some kind of power over the rest of the world? And I don't have an answer to that. You might have an answer to that, and if you do, you let me know in the comment section, but something needs to be done. And another example of this is just look at Lavrov, what he said today. He says when the rest of the country say they'll be there for as necessary or as long as necessary, he says, necessary for whom? He says, certainly not the Ukrainian people, but here I say once again that the Kremlin has clearly expressed its assessments in a detailed statement. Once again, just saying that means that they do not feel any pressure whatsoever. At least they're showing that they don't feel any pressure. But let me know what you guys think about this situation in the comment section below. It is definitely an interesting one. I don't think this Scholz phone call was as important as Scholz wanted it to be. Maybe he just wanted to do it because the election's coming up. Who knows at this time? But if you want to be updated with everything going on in Ukraine and Europe really, because that's mostly what we cover here, do make sure you follow me here and you turn on notifications.